All right, so the Nuggets defeated the Wolves last night in a matchup that hopefully gives the Nuggets a better chance at the one seed, even though we weren't quite sure how they would handle it. Um, I actually think Jokic believes that the game was not that big of a game. Like, I think when he said it, he wasn't like trying to deceive anyone, but his play definitely spoke on how he handled the game. Like you could tell that they understood the implications, but I do think that his approach, like mentally, was that it wasn't that big of a game. Well, but what did you notice? What was like your
No, like
takeaway?
I agree with you that he wasn't trying to deceive us when he said that. I think that is how he genuinely looks at, especially regular season games. Like he just tries to approach every game mostly the same way. Obviously, we know there are games when he's like below his level, to our chagrin sometimes, but usually they end up winning those anyway. Um, but so the first thing that stood out when you mentioned that was remembering the tip off.
Oh
And
God.
Yoke was uh, just messing around with, I forget the name of the official who was doing
Oh, I
the
don't remember who it
toss, or
was.
don't know
I
what you
know
call it.
Tony Brothers was in there, but I don't think that was
Yeah, he
him.
wasn't the one doing
Yeah.
the tip. I remember the broadcast said the name of the official. I just don't remember who it was. And Bob Myers was like, "Oh, he's messing with like so and so," and I almost wonder there are all these like those compilation videos of Yoke being silly, and there's the one where he's just sort of waggling around waiting for the tip to come, and that's how it felt at the beginning. So when I saw that in the game, I knew the outcome beforehand, by the way, because I didn't get to watch the game live. Um, but I thought, like, would I have felt differently about this if I didn't know the outcome of this game or if it had gone the other way? I don't think so because, like, when Yoke is like that, he's energetic. Actually, it's not like oh, he's messing around on the tip off, so he's not going to take this. He's going to play poorly. That's not what I was getting from his energy in the beginning of the game. I didn't know his final stat line. I don't think when I watched it, or maybe I did, but I had no idea how it was going to be from the beginning. But you're right. He was very serious from the beginning. I think that when they do play um, these really good defensive teams, even if it's a bad team, um, he knows that he's going to be the best matchup in that scenario. So, for example, when they played the Grizzlies last week, he was going at Jaren Jackson Jr. relentlessly, and I'm not sure that that he necessarily had to do that. Like to me, that almost felt more personal actually than the way he was going at Rudy, where it did feel like bullying the entire game.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah. Did you
and I
see?
know some people thought that with the Rudy matchup as
Yeah.
well.
Did you see like a clear difference from how Jokic was playing in the first versus the second? Because the second, especially in the third quarter, he was like going aggressively at Gobert and like physically bumping into him and then drawing and ones. Um, the
I think he was more aggressive in the second and third, but I think he was still pretty aggressive in the first. The main difference is the not the approach, but I guess the methodology of it. Because I noted this from the first possession of the game. They've got Nas was starting, right? So it was Nas on Jokic and Rudy roaming. And the Nuggets went right to their playoff adjustments, which was AG on the ball. And it's not necessarily AG like the offense is running through AG as in he has to score. I know a lot of people noted his final stat line wasn't great with respect to scoring, but AG's orchestrating. And so AG was the one that was in charge of getting Jokic the ball in his spot so that he could be aggressive. And he wasn't going at Rudy in the first, but he was going at Nas
yeah,
from the beginning of the game. And so I do think that from tip, he was like, we're playing a really good defensive team. I'm going to be the best matchup against them. So I need to be aggressive in order for the team to be able to succeed here.
Yeah, that was good to see him in that mode. Yeah, AG, he almost went unnoticed a little bit just watching the game live, just because he wasn't scoring and he's not getting dunked in the dunker spot like we're used to, and like he wasn't getting a lot of oops or anything like that. But
He did have that one cool reverse oop though.
yeah, eventually
So
he got his. But it was interesting that um I think Nuggets fans have talked about how some teams have played off AG or played some roamer off AG and whether that is effective or not. But this game, it made me really confident in that because he would just go and set a screen if no one was guarding him, or he would be
yep.
wide open and he could get the ball in the middle and then pass to Mike on the weak side. There was also we're just like lucky that he's so good at passing, and because other
Yes,
teams
yes.
have these wing defenders who aren't as good at passing or
We're like, oh my God, balls in his hands. I don't trust this person dribbling or doing anything besides some of them you'll like they can shoot like a
yeah.
little bit better than AG or something. But
There was also a hilarious play where I don't remember how exactly Gobert scored, but he scored, and it wasn't even like a transition play or anything. But Jokic was already running down the floor, posting up Nas in the paint, and AG's dribbling
yep,
the ball up and just hits him. And Gobert was like still running back, like almost like celebrating
yep.
that he scored.
No,
Um,
that's something that we saw a couple of times throughout the season when it wasn't necessarily when teams try this for like spurts. So maybe it wasn't the case that AG had the ball in his hands like they do with this adjustment. There's very few times in the regular season where I've seen it. This is really the only time this year that I remember them going to it. Again, the last time was in the Western Conference Finals, but that I can recall. AG having the ball in his hands and orchestrating. But when they had the other team center guarding AG, they had AG rim running throughout the entire game. I remember it happening in Philly to great success, right? Because like the Nuggets offense wasn't really the problem in that game, until the clutch time. But you have AG doing it Jokic and like running the center out of the gym. It's like, oh, you want to put that guy on me? Then I'm gonna do the same thing that Jokic always does, which is like just running them and making
yeah,
sure that we're testing their conditioning too. Uh, which
yeah,
actually, now that I think of it, is maybe one of the reasons that teams don't love to put their centers on Yoke is because he's always doing that. But if you want to try to put them on AG, you can do the same thing and really even better because um, not that he's better conditioned than Yoke. I think Yoke is probably the best conditioned person on the team, like
yeah.
no joke.
Uh-huh.
But AG's faster, so
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I don't know if maybe teams don't want their slow-footed centers on Jokic because Jokic is gonna have a quick spin move on like he
yeah,
did in Gobert, and like I don't know, I was just really I know like some of the story it was CB and P Watt and their defense, and like in the fourth quarter, all P Watt's blocks leading to buckets and all the dunks we were having, but I was really impressed with how AG set screens. And even like there was one play where he was like running from the baseline and Gobert was on him and just set like a really high screen for Murray. And he comes off the
mm-hmm.
screen. And I think Gobert is like in his head thinking, I gotta defend the three somewhat. And so he's stepping up, but he's kind of
Yep,
like not quite in position and kind of unsure exactly what he's gonna do. But Jamal was just so fast and just went right around him and scored easily on defensive player of the year, Rudy Gobert. So I liked that AG was just like getting people open despite the fact that Rudy was on him. It didn't seem like that big of an issue. Was there
and
anything
I
else?
so yeah, no, just to kind of um, riff off of that is I think that was kind of the story of the Nuggets offense in this game. They were very active on and off the ball, both in the half court, but especially in transition and semi-transition with all of these different off-ball screening actions in a way that I have not seen them all year. Like it looked like old school Warriors in transition motion offense that just forced the Wolves to second guess everything defensively throughout the game, like you're saying about Rudy guarding AG while he's quickly setting these screens on and off the ball. And I think that is how you have to attack the Wolves. And it was nice to see that the Nuggets not only knew that, but were able to execute that over the course of the game. But really, it was mostly in the second half because the first half got kind of sloppy in that second quarter in particular. But they came out with that requisite, the energy required to do that throughout the course of a game is very high, especially when, I mean, both teams were on back-to-backs and coming back to, I guess, greater altitude in the case of Denver because they had just played in Utah. But the way that they were approaching and executing on offense, particularly with the decisiveness, like you mentioned on that one play with AG setting screens, and I saw CB doing it, and Peyton a couple of times to a lesser extent also, that just makes them second guess their defense throughout, like force them to make decisions that can then allow either Yoke or AG to make a decision, like making a play or going to score, whatever it is. Jamal, obviously, as well. That just, you have to catch them off balance, because when that defense is set and you're trying to be slow and deliberate, it's just a lot harder to score on, especially for a team that was specifically constructed to slow down the Nuggets offense.
Yeah. And obviously defense was talked about a lot, like by Malone in the presser in the fourth quarter. And P. Watt had tons of blocks in the fourth. We had that same possession play where CB blocks Walker. Something
Alexander
that,
Walker.
yeah, Alexander. Sorry, nah.
Yeah. Shay's
but,
cousin.
Yeah, Shay's cousin. But yeah, like we shot 1-3 in the fourth quarter. And I know
I saw that. I was pretty surprised when I saw that stat.
Yeah, and I know P. Watt, one of the things that we'd been looking at with him was his spot up threes, and he had a little stretch where he was doing pretty good on that. But in this game, we're not relying on those threes from him, obviously, which I don't know that we want to be doing that at this point. But we were messaging each other about one play in particular with P. Watt where he was faking like he was going to get a handoff from Jokic on the elbow, but then just went and set a screen on KCP. And then KCP came around.
And KCP got a wide open layup with Rudy Gobert on the floor. I was like, yeah. Whoa, what just happened?
Because Nas was like trying to get back to P. Watt, but then KCP just goes and gets a layup, which you don't really see open shots like that in the paint against the Wolves. So that was pretty impressive that we did something like that in the fourth quarter, which the Wolves have not been a great fourth quarter.
They haven't been a good clutch defense.
Yes. Which I thought it was going to come to that, but we didn't quite get into like a clutch situation because we were kind of pulling away at the end. But
I'm glad for that. I don't know that my heart could have taken it, because although I wasn't watching the game live, I was following everything on Twitter. I was like, okay, guys, what's happening now? Are we up? Are they pushing away with the lead? I can't deal with more heartbreak.
I know. We are going to actually probably detail more of Jamal and his matchups, assuming the Wolves go far in the playoffs and we also go far into the playoffs. That is going to be an interesting thing. But is there anything else you saw from Jamal that you were interested in?
Yeah, I think that it was clear in the first half that Jamal was a little, he was definitely affected by Jaden McDaniels' length. on the perimeter that just made him second guess a lot of things. And it's one of those things where, like I said earlier, you have to be really decisive when it comes to this team. So if you're second guessing, then that's a win for their defense because it gives them a chance to recover. And then you're just kind of out of luck because they're really hard to score against when they're set. But in the second half, instead of there was a concerted effort to set a lot of screens on and off the ball for Jamal for him to be able to attack Jaden in particular in space. I didn't see a lot of he was on a minutes restriction, but I didn't see Jaden really or Jamal being guarded too much by anyone besides Jaden. I'd have to go back and look at it, but that is the key matchup that we're talking about in when these two teams face off anyway. So I thought that was interesting that was the approach they took, and it seemed to work. Where it was a lot of screen setting and Jamal being really decisive with his decision making off of those screens, whether it was to score in a particular way, coming off the screen, ready to shoot a three, ready to drive, ready to get to a midi, ready to attack in space, ready to pass, depending on if it was like they started blitzing him because he made a few threes. So there were a lot of encouraging things in this game if you're a Nuggets fan. I will say that if the Wolves do manage to slow the Nuggets down in a literal sense, there are encouraging things for a Wolves fan in that matchup as well, because it's not like Jamal was making buckets over Jaden the entire time, especially in that first half. Like I said, he was definitely affected on offense and got a little sloppy and all of that stuff. But I did think that both teams had things that they could take away from that particular matchup.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to break that down. I was encouraged with how Jamal scored, though, like, because I think we expect he's going to be slowed down a bit with their size, but there was a nice sequence in the third where he was coming out of an out of bounds play, and he got a handoff and then was coming around into the paint and just got a floater over Gobert, which if he has that in his arsenal. He then right after that he goes into like a little jumper, like crossover at the elbow where he's like shoving McDaniels off of him a little bit.
He kind of
like
crossed him up off the screen is what
Yeah.
happened. That's one of the things is it's hard to attack Jaden in space generally, but Jamal was attacking him in space off of the screen.
Yeah, for
So
sure.
there's just like different physics to that. And Jaden is like a bigger, slightly slower player. It's one of the things that I might even worry about with Peyton if he was to take on a similar matchup, like someone similar to Jamal.
Yeah,
Although I think Jamal is unique, and we'll get into that at a later date.
for
But
sure.
that is kind of how you have to attack those kinds of matchups. It sort of reminds me of what Jamal did against Jared Vanderbilt whenever the Lakers were able to keep Vanderbilt on the floor against the Nuggets in the Western Conference Finals. So